I'm Rose Dioro, and welcome to the Rosemoor Roundtable, a limited discussion series hosted by myself and Samantha Brentmore, covering a range of topics specific to the romance audiobook industry. This fifth roundtable discussion is part one of a series on the narrator perspectives in the audiobook industry. Specifically today, we will focus on our experience with the material itself and community engagement. Today, we welcome three guests, each with a unique perspective on the topic. The Rosemoor Roundtable is recorded over a live stream and produced and distributed by Brickshop Audio in podcast format. And now, here's your moderator for today, Samantha.
Hi, thanks, Rose. So, as she said, this is the first of a few episodes that we're going to do that are focusing on narrator perspectives in the romance audiobook space. And as we are focusing on mental health and managing that as narrators, we're going to dig into all aspects of scheduling, community engagement, the solitary nature of this job, and the content we record. So I'm going to dive in and have us go around, give your name and how long you've been recording in romance so folks know where you're coming from for the conversation. I'll kick us off. I'm Samantha Brentmore. I did my first romance book in 2014, and then I started really intentionally working in the genre about 2018. Joel?
I'm Joel Fremkin. I also record LGBTQ material as Joel Leslie. And I've been recording about 7 years, and I've been doing romance the entire time. That's pretty much been, I would say, about 80% of my career has been romance.
Great. Wesleigh?
Hi, I'm Wesleigh Siobhan. I've been recording since 2019, so I think that's about 5 years. Yeah. That's it.
This is Teddy Hamilton. I'm not sure. I started personally reading audiobooks in 2012, and somewhere early on, Teddy came into existence. So I suppose that's about. I don't remember exactly when my first romance book was, but I think it was pretty early on. So 2013 or so.
Great. So a lot of years of experience between everybody here. So I'm really excited to hear all your perspectives on things today. And I'm going to dive in on an issue that I feel like comes up all the time with narrators at no matter what stage they're at, which is scheduling. I feel like whether you're early on and you're like panicked because you're not booking enough, or you're like mid-career and you see those like dreaded gaps, or you're somebody who's having a boom and you're just accepting a lot and getting an overstuffed calendar, it seems that scheduling is the source of a lot of anxiety for a lot of narrators. So I'm curious for each of you, what your relationship with your schedule is like and how it has evolved over your personal careers. I'll kick it off with Joel and then we'll go around.
Oh gosh, I'll try and do this quick. So when I first started out, I went to a romance lit convention, and I was really lucky. And all these authors were coming up to me, and I made really great connections. And I kept telling them all, "Oh yeah, I can deliver that to you by June." And it turned out that I had told people that I had so basically I had squished like 30 books into like a 3-month period, not realizing what a mistake I'd made. So I learned that crashed and burned. And luckily it was early on in my career and people were nice enough that they understood and I managed to work it out. But I have more tics than a Swiss clock. Like I am a fucking mess. And I have very severe imposter syndrome. I am a perfectionist. I am very slow. I am very didactic. And if I'm given my druthers, I will spend an hour on 2 pages. I will get locked into this can be better, this can be better. And I've learned, and I'm very lucky, my husband handles my calendar. He is in complete control of that. He knows what I can get accomplished in a day, and we have a quota, and I am locked into that quota. My schedule is now set from now until May, and this is really important, I think, for people to learn, leave space for a publisher you want to work with comes to you. Leave space for the dream job, or, for my case, Spotify comes to me and says they want me to do another classic. And I'm like, fuck, I have to make space for this. So leave space for those dream jobs. But I if I don't have a quota each day that I know I have to get to, and by 10 o'clock in the morning, I need to have this many pages done, if I don't set myself that pace and that parameter, I would not be able to sustain myself as an artist. I would not have a healthy work life because I'd be working every night until 11 p.m. And I would burn a million bridges because I'd be delivering late. So I learned really quickly I have to have, in order for me to function healthily, a very strict calendar. I know exactly what page I have to stop at. And that's sort of, and I have prep days worked into the calendar and that kind of thing. But I've learned that structure is my freedom, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think sometimes we can actually be more creative or have a lot more freedom when we actually give ourselves those boundaries. So Wesleigh, what's your relationship like with your schedule? Do you have an amazing assistant who's keeping you in those boundaries?
I do. She's not my husband. I got to get one of those so that, maybe he could take over. But yeah, like early on, I got one book and then you get 3 and then you get 10. And one thing I learned was each book is not, one book may take me, let's say one 300-page book may take me a week, but another 300-page book will take me 2 weeks because the writing is completely different. There are different characters, it's a different style. And so I had to learn, that one page is not one page. 1 hour of recording for each author is not the same, right? But I do have an assistant. She helps me with everything, with scheduling, and just like Joel, with Joel's husband, she knows what I can accomplish. So she'll say, this particular, I have an author. Oh my God, her font is so big. And I swear she puts 2 paragraphs on each page. And I'm like, wow, I know.
I just did 200 pages in 5 minutes.
You know what I'm saying? Where another author, it's I can't even read the font. I have to, stretch it out because it's so much, so many words on one page. So she helps me a lot in figuring out, okay, if you get this author, you need to set 2 weeks aside, versus another author, I can get it done in 3 days. So she is extremely helpful. Another thing that has helped me is to be selective about what I take, because I'm at a place now where I don't want to say yes to everything, because if I don't have the time, I know I won't be able to do it justice, or I might not be right for that, or I just might not be in the mood for a particular style or a book or whatever, or I've set aside time to go on vacation, and I'm working on that work-life balance. So
yeah. It's definitely tough, I think, to find. And you kind of can't learn until you just do and make those mistakes and go, okay, well, never again. Or you learn from working with those authors a lot. So going over to you, Teddy, similarly, are you like these two?
Yeah.
You have to learn from those mistakes, I think. That's the other thing you got to do. I think in my early days, I was working as an engineer also, for one of the production houses. And so what was hammered into me was, in a 6-hour session, you should get 3 hours done. You should be there's the classical thing of 2-to-1 ratio in your narration. And I'm pretty good at about that. When I try to get about 3 hours done per day. Like Wesleigh was saying, there's sometimes you just for some reason, you're just not clicking with the book or something. And so then it takes you just twice as long to do it. My biggest struggle in this is a need to make everybody happy as much as I can. And then in pursuing that, I'm actually making everybody miserable, because I'm just saying yes to too much, taking too much onto my plate, and then being the person that I'm getting the amount of emails of hey, what's your ETA on files for this is overwhelming, because I've said yes to too many things. There's also this trick that happens sometimes where they say, hey, do you want to do a book? And I say, yeah, I do. And then a couple months later, they go, okay, so book 2's on. Can you get this done in the next month? And you go, Well, no, I can't. But all right, sure. And then you just cram it in as best you can.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that you can't plan for, right? That are, whether or not it's a series that they don't tell you in advance, or sometimes I find that a lot of times in romance, particularly with a lot of the self-pubs, they'll get on your calendar early and say, oh yeah, it's going to be like, 40,000 words for your part. And then you get the script and it's like, actually, it's 70,000.
Or they come in and they say, hey, the authors decided they want to do it as a duet now. And that actually adds more time to the thing, more than what the actual words are, because it takes longer to record a duet scene, because you have to like stop for a second and say, what am I responding to? What is this moment in this thing? Before you then say your 2 seconds of dialogue.
Sure.
Whereas if you were just narrating, it would just get inserted into the flow of the whole story. But you're having to pull all these things out of context. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So on this like idea of boundaries that we've all kind of been talking about, learning and finding systems to effectively...
Yeah, what I learned is that I need to get an assistant.
Just a couple things I just wanted to add on real quick. Because of one thing Wesleigh said, I think it is important for narrators to learn what to work from word count versus page numbers, because that's what stays consistent. So I'm a 20,000 words a day guy. That's what I can do. So that whatever that page number per book translates as, usually that's what I can function with. Also, don't be afraid to tell people, I can't deliver this until. I think a lot of starting out narrators are absolutely terrified to tell people, I can't deliver this for 3 months. And it just makes you look more desirable. It's not, and yes, sometimes you'll lose the odd book, but most of the time, if you're the voice they want, they will wait for you. And don't get in your head about what other people accomplish in their day. Like, Teddy gets 3 hours done. I could never accomplish that. Never. And I think a lot of people judge themselves on that. Do what is healthy for you, as long as it is meeting what you need to support yourself financially with what your narration is supposed to contribute to your economic life.
Yeah, makes total sense.
I totally agree with that. I told a publisher once, I would love to do this book, but I cannot make the deadline. And they were so grateful. They were like, thank you for letting me know. So I totally agree, Joel. I think they'll either adjust or they'll catch you on the next one,
Yeah.
It's frightening though. I remember the transition when I finally got the courage up to say, like, I can fit this in July 2025, and then they'd go, okay, and you're like,
right?
Is that easy? Oh my god.
Yeah, because somebody just said in chat was asking, so if you're earlier on, you're sort of hungry and you feel like you need to seem really accessible and available, so you want to say yes to lots of projects. And sort of, is there any advice for how you start getting selective? And I think the answer really has come out from what we said is like, well, know your own limits and trust that you're booking enough that you have those limits. And so somebody else will come around. And really, Rose and I had this conversation once because I'm terrible at this. And what happens is that then my read rate goes all over the place. I'll only be able to get 1 or 2 finished hours in. And then the next day push myself to do like 4 or like something that is absurd. And Rose had said, well, why would you put yourself in a situation that your best work isn't going to be out there? And I think scheduling yourselves when we're saying yes, 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 when you are early on in your career, you're not setting yourself up for success because you can't do your best work that way if you're just trying to please them all. So yeah, get assistance, I think but also know your limits and stick by them. And I think trust it is a really...
But it's really scary because there's this like turning down work, pushing work away from you is terrifying to me, at least. I'm a single income household, and everything relies on me and making sure that the flow of income is there. And that is terrifying to then say no, because maybe you said something earlier about like making hay when the sun shines. It's like those times when you have a a run. You're doing, you're getting a lot of work. I don't know when the end of that is. I don't know when that's going to suddenly disappear. And then I'm back to where I was years ago when it was like I'd do 2 books a year or something. And then I got to get a job then I got to get a job. So it's
the
frightening.
Freelancer mindset, no matter what industry. Yeah, I think if you talk to freelancers in any industry, it's kind of something that you have to be like geared to stomach. I don't know if Wesleigh or Joel, are there things that you do to manage that freelancer panic?
I don't know. I think having help is essential, but like, oh my God. And she has said to me, she was like, you told me to block these weeks off and then you went and took 2 books. And I'm like, girl, but it's the same thing. I'm like, I got scared, what do you mean? And so sometimes I do take the time off, but then, like Joel was saying, leave that space available for the book you really want to do. And I get it. Like as an artist, it can be feast or famine and you don't know. So I think it's like a case by case situation, moment by moment. Sometimes when I've said I can't, it's because I'm like, I really cannot, it's going to be a problem. But if I'm just sitting around, looking at my dog all day, I'll do your book,
My protection, I would say, my insurance from it is develop relationships, if you can, and this happens in romance, with authors who are prolific and that you have a strong relationship with. I have an author that books 5 books a year with me flat out, and I could probably do 9 for her if I had the space. Right? She churns them out and the audience is there for them and she wants me to do them. And the other thing is establish a healthy relationship with authors who have a backlist. So if you've got free time, you can go back to them and say, hey, that book that you did in 2018 that's not an audio? Why don't we do that one? And that can also be a really healthy way to feel in control. Also, there is nothing wrong, and all publishers will tell you this. If you have a relationship that's good with a publisher, no publisher is ever going to mind you saying, hey, I just realized I have a week in December. Do you happen to have anything that would suit?
Yeah.
They're never going to mind that.
Joe, I'm taking notes. This is good stuff.
I told you, Wesleigh, we're going to solve all the problems today. This is why I do this. I have so many problems that I'm hoping you guys will help me solve.
Well, that's what Joel's saying. I think there's also the balance of specifically our place in the romance world is also this balance between the indie world and the publisher world. Because you have the publisher world is like a more like corporate steam engine, thing that's they have constant work that they're churning out and putting out. And the indie world is an author who has created something and they want you to read it. And they'll sometimes say, hey, I'm writing a book right now. Will you be the person who reads this book? It'll probably come out sometime next year or something, and so, okay, let me know when it comes out. And whereas the publishers are a machine more that's, being fed content and they need to turn it into audio. And so I've had conversations with some people. I had some rough times a couple of years ago, and one of the people at one of the publishers, I was having a drink with him and he said, hey, if you're ever in a bad situation, give me a call. I can find something for you. And so there is that does exist. And that's one of the things that soothes the fear a little bit is that when you have relationships with publishers, with those companies and the people who work there, then it's a good thing that you can know that those relationships are real too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all freelancers have those jobs that we have to find in those relationships, whether or not you're like somebody who's building sets for Fashion Week, that you're like, I know every year I can go to Fashion Week and I can make my money. I think the same is true on narration.
But it's also then in that reason why, for me, if I've booked myself up with indie authors or I've booked myself up fully, but then that person from the pub calls and says, hey, I got this book. I need somebody to read it. Can you do it? that then I want to do it for them because of that relationship. And I want to value that relationship, and I want to give them, this past year I had 2 books. Actually, in this past month, it was last month. I'm in such a mess right now. But one of the past month, I had 2 different books where they were like, we need. Can you do it, please? Like we're in a bind. This thing needs to go to market like yesterday. Can you do it? And I'd go, okay, yeah, I will. And then I just stayed up until 11 o'clock.
Right. Which, to Joel's point, is we got to build that like oh shit space in our calendars, so that we have it, right? Yes. So that we can do it. I have to trick myself. Sometimes I like color code on my calendar the holds the same color as a project, so that at a glance it looks like I'm booked, and not until I dig in. I have to play a lot of mind games with myself. Okay, so shifting gears, obviously we could talk about schedule forever, but kind of an element of scheduling as well is then the content of that calendar that we keep. And how often are you finding yourselves narrating similar content back to back? Maybe like 3 dark romances back to back. And in what ways, like positive or negative, does that like impact you personally? Do you try to shape your schedule so that there's more variety, or do you like when you can do a number of them back to back? Joel, go ahead and kick us off.
I wish. I don't have that much control, I would say, over what I'm choosing to do. Where I get dragon shifter romances are, I have three, count them 3, dragon shifter romance series that I do. And if I have those back to back, my brain starts to know who the fuck is in which book and which dragon is talking to which dragon. And that can get rough. For me, in terms of like, if I could like wave a magic wand, I would have a classic every 3 months, a YA in that space, and maybe a middle grade in that space, peppered in with the romance, because that allows me my fun, healthy healing time in terms of doing work for me. But that's not where I am. And so I do what they send me as it comes in, to be honest,
But so you would say that romance for you, as somebody who narrates in multiple genres, romance is a place that actually, when you get to pop into it, fills a well and is like a nice counterbalance to the other work.
Yes. yeah. Let's say that. Yeah. It's
right. As long as the dragons aren't having sex back to back to back to back to back.
Right. Exactly.
What about you, Wesleigh? Do you find it difficult when you're getting a lot of the same back to back? Do you like it when you're in like, no, this month is basketball romance month? Or do you find that, similar to Joel, that flexibility is not something that you can really influence that much?
Yeah, I think I agree. I just wait to be surprised. I had an author who I adore, Christina C. Jones. She asked me to work on a project, and I had no idea what it was, but I love her so much. And it was a shorty, a novella, and it was about this vampire, this family of vampires. And I was like, what, girl? I didn't even know that you wrote about vampires. And this was like her first one. But it was a shorty, and it was so good. And I was like, I need the Blacks to come back. So I just kind of wait for a surprise. And then I got to do, oh my goodness, Lord have mercy, Before I Let Go, Andy Ryan. And that one just took me on a whole ride. And so
You're amazing in that.
What I love about being in this space is that I love the love. I love the romance. More specifically, I love being a Black woman in this space. And inside of these stories, it's just like love. And you see these women just fully embodied, 3-dimensional, just having all the feels, just falling in love with the man of their dreams. Like I'm into it. And so it's steady. It's like consistently, fun. And then I get surprised when I get, the occasional vampire or the motorcycle, what I mean? Or like, I'm trying to think of, I like when they shake it up a bit, but generally it's by their writing guides that.
Yeah, sure. And Teddy, you talked already that you work in other genres with stuff. Is it hard for you when they're the same type of stories back to back? Do you try to balance as much as you can when you're playing schedule gymnastics, different
Yeah,
genres?
I had, like this past year, I had this series, The Cat and Mouse Game by, I forget what her name is, but the Haunting Adeline and Hunting Adeline. And those were like sellout books. Those ones that were, everybody was reading those books and were obsessed with those books. So then the audio was really popular. And those books are dark. Those are very, very like, edgy, let's call them, books. And then because I was the narrator on that, and the people who are fans of audio were saying, ooh, Dark Teddy, who's this guy? Let's see. I'm liking this. And what then that meant was, because the fans were now talking about it, that then the authors who had a dark romance that they had written, now then they wanted Teddy to read their dark romance. And so then I had this like slew of just all dark romance for a really, like, there was like 2 months of just straight dark romance, and I was just spitting in people's mouths. It was like just intense.
Hard to do 5 days a week.
Yeah, and after a while, I said when I just said I need like a nice YA book. I just need like something to give me, a Dragon Shifter book, for the love of God, please. But so I started telling some of the people, like, I'm going to a weird place, because I think when I'm narrating a book, like, I activate that thing of my acting and my training. That's like, where do I have to be in order to be making these decisions that this character's making? Where would I have to go? What would have to be my driving force to make me be this particular way? That's different from me, Teddy Hamilton. So then I have to kind of put myself into a dark state of mind in order to read a lot of those books. And then I just start feeling weird in my life. And so like the variety allows me to dive back into a dark romance with fresh, like, yeah, you know what I want to do? I want to do some dark shit right now.
Yeah. Because conversely, I think it can be hard when you do, like, I find that if I have too many super sweetie ones, I start getting cynical. But I'm like, yeah, okay, you and your
so
cupcakes,
happy.
and it's like, oh, that. So like, I do find that like needing to bip bop around as much as possible is really helpful, and that sometimes like the palate cleanse of a nonfiction is like a lifesaver.
My God,
seriously. Yeah. And how do you guys get through content when you do get these projects that, whether or not you anticipated them being difficult, or didn't know until you got the manuscript? And it could be being burnt on a trope, could be because of where you're at in your personal life. Like, how do you guys get through those projects that feel particularly challenging?
I take breaks, go for a walk with the dog. I have snacks. I don't know. Instagram. I don't know. I just find a way to, like, just,
Instagram.
Yeah, I just take a break and just push through. Because I do have a tendency that if it's hard, I will probably break for too long sometimes, and I gotta come back, and it's like, well, girl, now you're sitting in here for 4 hours. You know what I mean? So, but again, it's like trying to get ahead of it, right? If it could be a little bit more challenging for you. I try to give myself extra time because I know I'm going to need it to get through some of the tough stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's balancing so that you're not just in this box with those stories, because it does. I mean, it is so personal and intimate, and you're just sitting here and you're in it, and you're like, "Woof, okay, let's go cuddle something."
Weirdly, this is going to sound crazy. I have that issue with comedy-heavy books because, to me, it is so technical. It is such a skill. And when you've got a writer that is basically giving you 8 hours of the equivalent of stand-up, right?
Yeah.
And you're having to deliver joke after joke after joke, and the craft of that and the way it's shaped, and it is tiring.
Yeah, the energy. You got to put a lot of energy into it.
And I have an author that writes very almost sitcom structure, like five jokes a page, 5 like laugh lines a page.
Oh,
Please.
wow.
And they take me so long because I'm like, no, that wasn't right. I have to nail it. So sometimes the opposite end of the spectrum can be more tiring physically on your actor's brain. In terms of one thing of looking after yourself, one thing I did is I did go to a publisher and I said, please, can you not send me any more than trilogies? Because it was killing my schedule. And also as a gay romance author, a gay romance narrator, I get a lot of what I call branching series. And personally, they drive me fucking crazy. Where the first couple is a couple, and then the next book is the couple's milkman. And then the milkman's cousin. And you end up with, by book 7, you end up with all of these characters who I had to do in first person alternating chapters all by myself, talking to each other and coming in and having brunch. And you just want to shoot yourself because how do you end up not getting to a place where you are relying on manipulating your voice rather than, because these are first POV alternating chapters, book after book after book. So I found them not good for me to do over and over and over again. So I did sort of set that boundary and make that request. So,
That's a really great tip because I think that's true. A lot of romance writers do these big branching epics. And, by the time you get to the 10th book, you're at a dinner scene with like 20 family members and you're like...
and they're all men between the ages of 25 and 35.
Yeah, and they all have deep growly voices.
They all have deep growly voices. Yeah. I will say that I have a theory that I work from as much as I can when I'm doing these kinds of things that you're talking about, Joel, where when it's the first person narration, it's a voice. When it's a character in a book, it's a side voice, if that makes sense. So I'll know that, yes, this guy who I read in book 2, I made him like real deep guy. I don't think that. And I might honor that I put him deeper than everybody else.
You morph it.
But I'm more fit. Yeah, you have to.
You're vocal neutral. You have to.
So I don't spend the next 8 hours trying to sound like this.
Yeah.
But that's a way to maybe get kicked off a series. So,
I remember working on a project and I called the author. I was like, how dare you? All of the women of this series were at brunch. And I was like, girl, they're the same woman. They're like having a conversation together. Like, don't do this again.
No, it's tough. And but I love that idea of saying like, I could do a trilogy. I can't do the entire epic. And I think more and more I'm seeing, at least in the indie pub space, is that they're finding different pairs for those stories throughout. That keeps it kind of fresh also for the listeners.
Another issue that I run into with this is that I ran into this last year with a big broad branching series that book like 5, they decided to have the main character have a British accent. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever listened to me do a British accent, but I am not amazing at accents. That's one of my big weaknesses. And so, but they didn't ask me, months prior when I was saying yes to book 1 that I could do a British accent. But now by the time we got to book 4, she had decided she wanted to do a main character who was a Brit. And I had now read the main male of each one of these series, so she wanted me to read this one too. And you go like, I would have turned this book down prior, but now I'm like screwing up your whole vibe to say no to this book.
Or they add a character first POV of ethnicity into the mix.
Yeah,
happened to me, and you're like, and I'm like, I can't do this.
Right.
We got to add somebody else into the mix now.
Yeah. And I think we need to have a little bit more. One of the conversations I'm hoping to push forward more, which will bring us in the next section, is like trusting the audience a little bit more to go with you. Sometimes I think people get really attached to certain voices and say, well, you're the voice of this series, and so that's the only thing, and you're locked into this. But I think we can trust that readers and listeners, if the casting is a good fit, they'll go with you on a new voice. And it can bring something new, I think, to the series, which I hope to see more of. There's a deep bench of talent like out there. So shifting a little bit to community, I think romance is really unique to other genres, that it has one of the more active and engaged readerships between the social media spaces, but also conventions. And I think all three of you engage with that community in different ways and cultivate community in different ways. Like, I think, Joel, what you're doing with the narrator community is really unique, especially I really want to dig into the things that you're doing there. But just to kind of kick us off, Wesleigh, you're somebody who has a fan group and you do a lot of work with that fan group, either Walking with Wesleigh, or I think I saw some like karaoke things. So can you talk about where that group came from and what's been really like fulfilling about like managing that, and what are some of the challenges in managing that?
So I had 4 ladies reach out to me and said that they were like, "Oh my God, we love you. We want to start a fan group." And I was like, "Knock yourselves out." And so that happened. So I don't manage the fan group. It kind of manages itself. It's mostly on Facebook. And there is an IG account. But from that, I saw there was just a need to continue to build community. So that's really what I try to focus my Instagram account on, building community and, entertainment. So I like to do all kinds of fun things just because that's who I am as a person. And I just try to find ways to connect it to what we're already doing. And a lot of women have talked about, so specifically with Walking with Wesleigh, people are always talking about, "Oh, girl, I got to lose this weight." Okay, well, how can we do this together? I'm already walking every morning and listening to an audiobook. So I thought, oh, what if I brought this to the community? And to be honest, it was something I was a little nervous about. And one of the women from the fan group, they were really supportive and thought that it would be a really good idea. So basically, that's it. I just asked folks, would you be interested in just checking in every day, saying that, you walked your 30 minutes, what you listen to, and are you meeting your goals, and just supporting each other through the process. We did a puzzle party the other night. So I partnered with a woman who owns a puzzle company and just asked everyone to either buy the same puzzle or buy a puzzle from her. We got on Zoom and just talked and put our puzzles together and sipped wine, and we're doing Narrator Okie, which is something we did last year. But it's just a fun way for people to like, oh, I can sound like Wesleigh, or this is how Wesleigh sounds, to me, and or this is my Wesleigh voice. Everybody
so what's
has like
really satisfying for you about being, you talked about it's important to have that community. So it sounds like personally for you, it's like really great to feel that connection to the readers and be able to give a little bit of yourself to them in that kind of connection.
Yeah. And I think too, just holding space for them because they enjoy the community. They have welcomed me into the community. I love the community. So as much as I can be of service to the community in a way that feels really good to me, I try to do that. So
yeah, no, I think it's great. And I think what you're doing with your group really feels really unique and special to the people that are a part of that community. Teddy, you do something, you go to conventions. You're somebody who's gone to Love in Vegas for many years. So you're engaging with fans in a slightly different way, which is in person and getting to see them face to face. So I'd love to know kind of what is really fulfilling about that, what can be challenging. And also, like, you did something a little bit different this year, if you want to talk about, showing up and like, participating in that back and forth with fans that way.
Yeah, well, I think for me, it's that there's a community there in my that I want to be a part of, if that makes sense. Like the community, the book community, the listener community is a community that I try to be a part of, like as a member of that community. I'm doing something slightly different because I'm the narrator on the books, but if that allows me on, say, like online, a lot of what I like to do is boost other people's posts. Like I have a pretty good following on Instagram, and if I can boost somebody's post who made something really nice, like who made a really cool thing, but they only have 200 followers, if I can boost their post on my platform, whatever you want to call it, then maybe that'll help other people see that this person actually makes really nice posts.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So I like to just get involved with the community that is there. But as Wesleigh said, I mean, I think community is a really great sort of overarching term. I go to these signings. I try to go to them. I always go to Vegas, but this year what I did this year, there's been a thing where, you see a lot in the narrator world, a lot of people starting Patreons. You see a lot of people with merch that's like, Teddy gives good oral or something like that, And I wanted to get involved with that to give, because so much of, at least at the book signing things, it's a like kind of a collector culture where they want to collect all the signatures. They don't even read the hardcore book. They just put the book up on their shelves as a trophy, but they want to have the author and all the narrators' signatures on their books. And it's like fun little collections. So I thought, well, I do separately in my own regular life, I do photography and these little art pieces that I make for an art tour that I do out in the desert. And I said, I'll just make a bunch of those and sell those as something that's merch, because then it'll be like a nice little fun thing that if you want to have a Teddy something, that it would be something that Teddy made himself, with this, that then you can have. And I don't know, that's something that it's a merging of my own also outside interests with this work also.
Right. Kind of similar to what Wesleigh is saying, is that it's like we can very easily be construed as just the voices and the characters that we are. And this is a way to bring something that's like, well, like I'm also this other person that has these other interests, and like I'm engaging with you as a person and your own creativity.
Yeah.
So here's mine. And like I think community only works if people show up on both sides. And like I thought it was a really cool way. I think what Wesley's doing, as well, like these are really cool ways to show up on both sides. And I think with Joel, go ahead. No, go.
Sorry, don't go to Joel yet. It's still me. No. I was just going to say, that really resonates what you're saying about showing up as a person to people, because we're all people and we're all actually involved in this same thing, whether or not you're engaging in the listening or you're engaging in the narrating. We're all just people and we're all involved in the same thing together. So let's all be people together. It's
100%. Yeah. And I think it's easy. Sometimes the systems around the industry can try to erode that or create distance. And so I think that it's really great to see that, like, it's actually healthier, for us sometimes to say, like, no, I'm a person. Hi, person.
Hi person.
Hi, person.
I am person also.
So Joel, one of the ways that I think social media over the past few years has really been a place that, people in the voiceover industry have been encouraged to show up and participate. And those audience can be, I'm either talking to fans or I'm talking to other narrators. And the narrator community itself, I feel like over the past few years, across genres, but also in romance, has really come together. And you're somebody who does a lot to engage narrator communities, whether or not they're retreats or this one that's coming up on a cruise ship, which I really want to hear about and talk about. So like, how did you, and I'm sure also that you have your own engagement with fans. So how do you navigate those communities that you're very active in?
In terms of fan groups, what I would say is I completely agree with Wesleigh that I think my fan group came about because somebody came to me. People came to me and said, we want one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that younger narrators, I don't mean age, but I mean starting out.
Yeah.
Some romance narrators, I've seen them get fixated on join my fan group, join my fan group, join my fan group, thinking it's going to generate readership or generate attention. And that's not how it works. What you want to do is you want to garner the portfolio and the following, and then bring those people together to create a community where they can share and play. And that's what one of my super fans who's amazing really is the admin of my group. I'm there as part of that community, and I engage and I contribute, but she is the driving force of it, rather than me being like, I didn't start narrating and like 6 months in go, I need to have a fan group.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
not, I don't think that's healthy,
Mm-hmm.
because you're just going to be like, nobody likes me. And it's because you don't have enough out there for people to fall for
That's
you.
right.
Now, I will say the world of TikTok has changed that, because there are these, there are these guys who have sexy voices that now go on TikTok and BookTok
Yep.
and can develop 1 million followers in 4 seconds. And that can shift the dial in a different way. And TikTok can, because it demonstrates your voice, and if you've got 1,000 followers, you can go on live and you can pull in new fans through social media that way. But in terms of a fan group, don't beat yourself up.
I think you're right too, because it can be an ego distraction, right? Like then you don't
Yeah.
think about the work.
Yeah.
You're actually like getting sick on like ego and being like, oh, my success is tied to titles I'm getting, likes I have, fans I have, and you're like, this is not,
I'm getting exactly. Yeah. In terms of the reach, the connecting with the narrator community, it really sort of started when we started teaching acting for audio, which we've now had probably like 130, almost 150 people come through now. Which is another big thing that came into my schedule, learning how to balance that, because that's 3 hours a night, 3 times a week that I had to learn how to balance that life aspect. But we have a Facebook community for that, and they have become a tribe, and they now speak the same lexicon of working and technique, and they support each other, and they have their own little clutches of Facebook groups that they get together, or Zoom meetings that they have to support each other. So that's sort of become its own little communal world. But, the audiobooks at sea thing largely came about because a number of things. I saw people, to be honest, a little frustrated with the spatial relationships at APAC last year, which were very compressed, shall we say.
Oh my God.
And very, and not
I forgot about that.
and sort of stressful. And next year, APAC's not in person, so there was not going to be the same opportunity for, and the Audis are in LA, which a lot of people won't go to in the same way because it's a different distance. And we realized there was going to be a gap in that narrator breathing, connecting, meeting our tribe space. And also, Rich and I really became addicted to cruising recently in the past 3 years, because
so good.
He learned it's the only time I switch off. He learned the only time I will not be on my computer, worrying about work or doing something, or like I have to constantly be working. It's a problem for me. And it's the only time I just relax and eat and,
go with the flow.
Go with the flow. And so we realized that we could sort of try and, while combining that with a workshop a workshop learning experience, also make sure to carve into, it's a 5-day cruise, also carve into that the breathing space for it to be sitting with your narrator friends by the pool deck, relaxing with a pina colada, and recharge. And I think that's really important. So yeah, it's April 6th to 11th next year. I think it's going to be very healing and joyful and playful. We're doing ridiculous things like stupid scavenger hunts where you have to get pictures of Travis Baldree making a muscle, like stupid things like that. And so we're really trying to make it not just a workshop on a boat. It's a breathing space while you learn, and it to let us, because we don't get out, we don't get sunshine, we are trapped in a box. And so we really wanted to try and connect people in that way, where they could feel their pulse rate go down, they could breathe, they could get the vitamin D, so that's sort of where the idea really came from.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. We've got 80 people coming so far. It's crazy.
That's incredible. I think if we don't find these ways to slow our systems down, then I mean, it's a marathon sport that we do, narrating audiobooks. And I think like you have to find your pace. And I think that is tied to finding the ways that you do slow down. And I think there's a lot of things in the industry that put pressure on us to go, do, book. And there's not a lot of things like what you're talking about that bring people together and say like, hey, we're in this together. And like, how's it going for you? And again, like we were talking about the other community aspects, like, hi person, like you're another person that's navigating this together. And it makes me think, I think another challenge that this work has is the kind of isolating nature of the work. And especially as there's been a push for more home records in the last 5 years, to say, you know, it used to be maybe you'd go to studios and you'd see other actors and form community that way. And now we're all in our home booths. And outside of opportunities like what you're talking about, Joel, I think it can be really hard to find your community. And do you guys have like, do you have like group chats with like narrator buddies? Do you have narrator friends that help you get through this? And if you do, like, how did you find those connections?
You know, early on when I first started, Andy Arndt was a big resource for me. And so I made a lot of like relationships and friends just from events like online, because this was like 2020. So everything was, you know, virtual. So I made a lot of connections that way. Like some people I didn't even meet until last year at the Audis, but we were like, you know, like internet buddies. So, you know, a lot of my, I guess, comfort when I need to like reach out actually is in the indie romance space. A lot of those women have become my friends. A lot of the authors have become my friends. And so in terms of narrators, I still lean on January LaVoy. You know, I'll reach out. I'm like, girl, I need help, you know? So I still have my go-tos, but golly, I'm thinking, wow, I don't know how many new narrator friends I have. I may need to go on this cruise, Joe, and make some friends.
Yeah, it's hard. Because you can be first of all, very rarely are you on a book together. And sometimes, and it's usually like, you know, if you are, then you're just on a production chain that says like, hey, this guy's got a French accent, watch out. But you're not really forging that connection. And it can be kind of scary to be the first person that's like, hey, what's up? You want to be friends?
Yeah.
Joel or Teddy, do you guys have like those micro communities?
That's another thing that I will say Acting for Audio created, because it's a group of 10 people each class going through 15 weeks. So they're creating, and we literally are creating a theater ensemble. And so they are fine. I love that when I went to Johnny Heller's New England workshop and things like that, there's a whole clique of them that are instantly buzzing around each other, and there is a closeness being created. But I do think it is vitally important in this industry. I think it's great. I think Wesleigh's right. Have a mentor who you can reach out to. Have somebody that you admire that is a cheerleader for you when you need that. But also have those people that you can safely bitch to. Because so often you'll be frustrated with something someone's written for you, or that you have to say, and you want to post it on Facebook in a narrator group and be like, can you believe this shit that I had to say, whatever. You want to do it. And I promise you, the release you will get in that moment is never going to be worth the exponential damage and stress that will come back to you when the blowback from that bitch comes back to bite you in the ass. And it's hard. I have my super fan that runs my group, Mo. I will send her quotes a couple times a week of like ridiculous things that make no sense that I'm having to narrate. I have a friend, you know, I have another male romance narrator friend who, when we have to narrate sex scenes that are clearly written by women who have not understanding of how male bodies work, we will get that off our chest. And you need to be able to let off steam when we don't have coworkers and sit in an office and a water cooler. Like, we can't bitch about the boss like other people can. So find that safe, private space and outlet and friend group that you can vent to, because it really is important for your health, but B, really important for your career. Because otherwise, at some point, you're going to playfully make fun of something just that you think is silly or whatever, and someone is going to take that the wrong way. And
also, if I can jump in right there, because this was something that I had a couple of books a few years back that I produced, and I put all the money on having for one of those royalty share things, and right before one of the books went live, then a co-narrator decided to just Facebook outrage all over something and like specifically call out the romance author community for like being so shitty about this one thing.
Whoa.
And then everybody got like pissed about it, and it became this big thing of like fuck you, man, like these are the people who pay your bills, like
exactly.
And so then on my side of it, as the producer who put up my own money to have this thing, that book tanked. That book did not get any things because everybody was mad at that narrator. So I think people were like, man, I'm not going to listen to him. And so then I was like, I never want to work with this person again, because I can't trust that they're going to be smart. It was. That's just to say yes to what you're saying,
and that
Joel.
person
That was an immediate.
Yeah. And to Joel's point, that person is entitled to that perspective and opinion,
Absolutely.
but not a public pressure release valve.
Exactly.
And that's why. And I think you can, if your life is this box and then like social media, and you don't actually have real safe spaces that are smaller than that, then you think, oh, well, I'm putting myself out there, so I'll just put it out there because everybody here's my friend. And you're like, well, but that was also just like for everyone to see and respond to. And also didn't give you the chance to like, with my best friends, like they know that like I'm just being an asshole, but that's not me. That's just me needing to be an asshole for a second because like we're all human beings.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I have a text thread with some friends that's what happens in this text thread stays in this.
I love it.
Yeah, no, it's important. And I think it's just, it's hard to find that. I think to Wesley's earlier point of like, well, if we're not going out, but that there are other opportunities to like, one, be the person who just reaches out and like tries to form that, or two, participate in things like Joel was talking about that inherently by their structure help you form that community. Because we don't have the places like we used to years ago. I was lucky enough at Brick Shop for a while that most of the people that I know really well, because I was producing in the studio, you'd see the same people working there time and time again. So you get to chat in the green room, even if you're working on wildly different things. And we just have to find that ourselves.
But when I first started back in 2012, the Dion Audio, who I worked for, Bob and Deborah Dion used to buy lunch for everybody who was in the studio with them. And so there was always this time, like right around, 12 o'clock or 12:30 or something like that, lunch was served. So then all of the narrators, all the engineers, everybody who was working that day would go down and then just sit around in tables and just have like, a half hour, 45 minutes or so of like shooting the shit out on the back patio. That was so nice. It was a really.
But now you get to go do it on a cruise.
Time.
Like this.
But now we can do it on a cruise.
Like that's, really where we should be doing it. So I don't want to take up too much more time. The last thing I kind of would love to get your perspective on ties back a little bit to some of the seductions of ego, which is navigating scale and also kind of tied to that like feedback and reviews. I think we've all worked on books. So there's two kind of things. Feel free to jump in on whatever aspect of this speaks to you. But I think one piece of this is we'll work on things that we think this is going to be huge. This is going to be amazing. Everybody's going to see it. And then nobody reads it. And there's navigating that disappointment or frustration, which may not exist for you. Or there's things that you work on and you're like, I don't know how I feel about this, but nobody's going to listen to this or read it. And it blows up huge. And that brings a lot of attention on you. Kind of like we were talking about Dark Teddy, then all of a sudden gets formed into being when something blows up big. So how do you navigate those sides of that? And then conversely, kind of tied to that is this idea of like the reviews that then come out of that. Are you engaging with reviews? Is this, I think a lot of people get really tied to, I need these reviews in this place or these awards from here. And it's a whole, I think, a kind of a toxic ecosystem that is unavoidable. And I'm curious, like, how have those things impacted you guys and how have you navigated them? A big winding question.
I'll just start with reviews. Early on, like my first couple of books, I did read the reviews because I had no context of like how this was landing and what people thought. And if I ever saw something, I'm like, ooh, I don't like that, I would just not read reviews for like a month or something. It's scary out there. But I'm at a place now where I don't even think about reading the reviews on Audible because I think that sometimes people are venting and bitching and, just getting their frustrations out. And I don't think that they always think that there's another person on the other end of this that's hearing this and how it's landing. And I don't know that you can go back in and change that thing after you've then said all this, fiery stuff. And maybe you had a change of heart later, or I don't know, but it's just something that I tend to stay away from. And I'm affirmed when people DM me and they're like, oh my gosh, I was listening to this book and I loved it. Or they make a post and they're like, oh my God, and it's a book I just forgot about. Or I also get really excited when it's a book that I love. And I've learned not to jinx myself because that has happened. There are books that I'm like, this is the best and everybody's going to love it. And it's like, meh, lukewarm. And I'm like, are y'all crazy? So I just stopped.
I crushed that. Yeah.
And I just wait to hear what people think about preparing my posts, so I'll maybe find quotes from the book or something that really affected me. So if it is something that people are talking about, then I'm ready to like jump in that conversation too via Instagram. So I may jump back in, but that was the thing that really...
you let it come to you now. You no longer sort of seek it out is really lessons learned from the Audible review scape.
Yeah, because it's like, I don't know, my job isn't to like... It's not about reviews. It's like my job is to tell the author's story. Hire me for a reason. I'm going to do that job to the best of my ability. And I hope and pray that the listeners really enjoy. And I think I know what they like from me, right? They like my honesty. They like my truth. They like my mode of storytelling. So my job is to get in that booth and tell this story to the best of my ability. And I'm pretty confident that the people who enjoy my mode of storytelling are going to enjoy the book because it's me. I'm not going in trying to be anything other than what Wesleigh can bring.
Sure. Yeah. Makes sense. What about Joel or Teddy? Anything around reviews or the other sort of ecosystem of like, oh, are you getting an audio file? Oh, do you have an audio? Like there's a lot of noise that I think is...
Do you have a fan club?
Yeah, sure.
There's something, I'm actually just seeing... I think it might be Tiffany Porter who's talking, and she only shows up on our comments as Facebook user, but it's a kind of an important thing that she's talking about in the comments here, which is the mixing of the way in which the listeners are reacting to the book and the characters and their relationship to the book and the characters, and then how that gets sometimes imprinted onto the narrator. And like, so when you start to go down when you start to go down the review world, like they might be saying, oh my God, Teddy was so hot in this book. But what they're really saying is that Zaid, this character, was so hot. But I get to live in the world of, it's all Teddy right there. And the same thing, what you see, there's a lot of talk about some of the flack that the female narrators get in this world, and what I think it was me and you, Samantha, in Vegas, wasn't it? Where one of the fans that we were talking to said, it just gets complicated when I'm imprinting myself onto the female main character, because then I'm wanting to put myself into that position, but then I don't like what she's doing, or I don't like how they're acting, or I disagree with it, or I wouldn't do it that way, kind of thing. So this is complicated what I'm saying, but the main point is that once you start getting into the review world, you're getting into a very deep well there that has more to do than just a honest reaction to your work as a narrator.
Right.
And so I think I tend to take both with a grain of salt, one way or the other. You hated it, okay. You loved it, okay. I sort of just I'll take it if something stings, because there's sometimes things that sting a little bit that I'll just go, all right, missed that one.
Yeah.
And there's other ones where it can really inflate my ego, but I'm just not gonna.
It's dangerous. I think it's a very dangerous distraction, and there's a lot of that noise around. What about you, Joel?
I have a very different perspective on it, I will admit. And maybe it's not the healthiest one. but I have a background in education, and I'm a learning junkie. And I subscribe to, it's a website called Narrator, which will send you your reviews every morning. And if you want to, you can filter out the 1-star, the 2-star reviews, and just get the good reviews if you want. But I look at my reviews that I am getting from Audible every morning, and then I Google and see if any blog reviews have come out, and I Google and see if any under both my names. It is not about an ego thing for me. It can be a boost, yes.
It's a tool.
Yeah. It's a tool. But what I've learned, and what I try and teach my students, is that if you look at reviews as an aggregate. So if one person hates you, right, then that's fine. Let them go. But if 10 people are saying your female voices are forced, if 10 people are saying you have a weird cadence, if then you need to be able to step back and use that as, it may not be written as constructive criticism,
sure,
but you need to use it as constructive criticism, because if many people are having the same response, that's something you need to work on. And I know that in the first 2 years I was narrating, my listener reviews drastically informed how I adjusted my style, how I adjusted certain aspects of my performance, and I think made me a better narrator. Now, what I will say is the bad ones do stick for me. And what I've learned is I make myself read the positive ones twice, and I make them sit in my body. Like, what my tendency is to scan the good ones and be like, they're idiots. Right. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm not any good. They're foolish to think this is good, and pay attention to the bad ones. So now I read the good ones twice and make myself take that into my body, and then learn. But there are Reddit threads of people who fucking hate me, and there are also,
I feel like that's an achievement.
and there are also Reddit threads of people who think I'm the best thing since sliced bread. There are people who literally say my Australian accent makes them want to vomit, and there are Australians who say I'm the only US guy who can do a credible Australian accent they've ever heard. So you cannot please everyone, but they can be a very healthy learning tool if you learn to give as much credence and headspace in your body to the positive as the negative. And also, I'm using them in terms of, like when I get a good blog review, and this is something unique to romance because there's not many blog reviews that happen outside of romance, but it does. I will post that review and I'll tag the author and I'll tag the publisher. And that's useful to have that on your radar. And that is a way of, or if a good review comes out for a publisher book that I did a romance, I'll send it to the publisher and be like, hey, just so you know, we just got this. That's useful. And if you're shutting yourself off from that information entirely, you're losing a communication tool with people to gain confidence about potentially hiring you. So you got to be healthy. You have to take them with a grain of salt. And I'm not saying I succeed at that, but I do use them as a very consistent tool in my life.
No, that resonates with me. I definitely learned early on that I was saying thank you, which you say at the end of like every book for thank you for listening. That I was like, I'm saying that whatever I think I'm saying is not what people are hearing. And very quickly I was like, well, we need to adjust that. But other times it's like, oh no, this is this one person that seemingly hates me, but like goes to every book and writes the same terrible thing that I think is like everybody saying, and you actually look at the username and you're like, oh no, this person just doesn't enjoy me.
This is one person.
I'm sorry, you keep listening to me. So yeah, I think it is because I think that's the only way you can protect ego as well. What's up?
Can I just, one thing that I really like about what you're saying, Joel, is the communication part, because it's sort of connected to what we were saying about this solo in the booth, isolated thing that, if you're doing a show, if you're doing a play, you got an audience right there who's going to react to you in that moment. And if your timing on your joke is off, then guess what? It's silence, and you can hear crickets out in the audience. So that you're not landing your timing on your jokes, or, so communication is really important to the audience. And that's what you're basically saying, that really sticks with me good. And I like that a lot.
What about
of just listening? You're listening to that is also just a way for you to then know whether or not what you're doing is landing.
Yeah, has the intention that you went in with, for sure.
Yeah.
What do you think about this other sort of industry element that I see a lot of early stage narrators fixate on as like a benchmark, which is, I got to get into audiophile. I got to get a Sovus. I got to get, an Audi. Do you think that is like an easy distraction? Is it similar to what we're talking about reviews? Just grain of salt. Great if it happens, or is it something that like really should be focused on and worked on so hard as that benchmark that a lot of people. How
do you even work on it? Yeah, like, what do you even do to like? To me, it's if you want an award for what you've done, if you want recognition from the trade papers, if you want even great reviews, as we're talking about, then that all starts in the booth, in the work that you're doing as a narrator. So if you're doing that work, then the rest will come or it won't. And if you have a really great book, I have one book that's one of the ones you were talking about. It's called Mun Mun. It's like the most amazing book I ever read that nobody gives a shit about. But I loved it, and I actually sent a message to Audiophile and was like, hey, I just wanted to say I did this book. That's amazing. It was an amazing book. And I also think I did a pretty good job on it. But hey, will you guys do a review of it? And eventually, a couple months later, then it came out. And it was just like, yeah, here's this cool book. Review. There you go. And I was like, okay, well, never mind.
Yeah. Joel, Wesleigh, anything to add on that? I mean, I think it's very well said.
I think they have use in terms of they don't hurt.
Right. Of course.
They don't hurt. But you also can't control it. Like I said to my husband this year, I was like, I had nothing this year that is going to be a blip on the Audi radar. I was doing an awful lot of stuff that is not heft, that is not as high profile, that is not their kind of thing. And so sometimes maybe if it's that important to you, you curate that kind of work, but you try and, even if it's an indie book that you're reaching out, that you're making that happen. But I totally agree with Teddy. Some of the books that have meant the absolute most to me, that have resonated the deepest, that I've thought was the best writing and the best performances I've ever given, have like 2 reviews on Audible.
Yeah. Agree.
Nothing. So you can't control that, and all you can do is tell people maybe you'd like this, try it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah,
And go ahead.
I agree with Teddy too. I think the work and in a lot of ways the reward is what you do in the booth. You know, it's your connection to the material, just as for me as an artist and what I get to bring to it. You know, I think early on when I started narrating, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people were drawn to me. One, because I did make myself available on Instagram, and a lot of Black female narrators were not doing that. So it was just like, girl, we love you. And they were hungry for it, you know. And so I don't know. I think, not to keep saying the same thing over and over, but it really is the fact that I get to work on these stories inside of this space, and these women feel seen and heard. Like, that is the reward for me. I had somebody ask me early on, she was like, you should, be submitting to the Audis, and you should have your authors do this. I said, girl, they have to pay for that. You know what I mean? I said, they're fine. And so there are a lot of like smaller independent, accounts or organizations who have created their own awards, inside of that community. Sure. But for me, yes, to Joel's point, it's great to be celebrated and those things feel awesome, but it's not why I'm doing this to get a nomination or to get an award. Like, this is the last thing I'll say about that, but I had someone say to me, I'm a nurse, and, listening to you and Jacoby through the pandemic, early on in the pandemic, you guys got me through. That means more to me than, a nomination and an award. Because
that's the best award.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because you are spending so much time alone, isolated, pouring yourself into these stories, but it lives forever and it's affecting life. I have people who listen to books over and over again. I'm sure we all do, because it's resonating with them. It's giving them hope, and it's allowing them an escape. And we don't know what they're going through in their lives and why they need this escape.
And I think a lot of times we put these markers out and think that they're going to do more than they actually do. And the reality is that you're like, just like Teddy was saying, like, oh, great. Okay. Well, and moving on. And I think it can, it's nice, but I think grounding yourself in the work and the real connections to the person on, who's wearing the headphones and listening to the story is so fulfilling. So much more than any of the other stuff.
I don't know this for a fact. So this is conspiracy theory on my part. But in the booth, my relationship to the author, to the story, that's what's important for me as the narrator. As far as once you start getting into the awards and the reviews and the audiophile stuff, it starts to become a game that involves a lot more than just my narration.
Right.
It becomes more than just what I did to the book. I'm one piece of this thing. Yeah. And there's also stuff that, the publishers are pulling little power moves against each other at the Audis. And, like there's authors that are suddenly like actually just, we don't even know about in the audio world, but their book in the real world is, not in the real world, but in the book, like the hardcover world is like blowing up, New York Times best-selling book for forever. And any kind of love that we're getting on this thing, I get so much love on this Rebecca Yarros book that I do nothing on. I have I'm one chapter in this one book that has gone huge. She was just on Today in LA today because her book went viral everywhere. Right. It's like a huge New York Times best-selling book. I didn't do anything on that book, but I get to like kind of just like get some of the like slough off love for it because I did one chapter for it. That one might be up for an Audie. Who knows? Because it's such a big book, it's one that certainly the publishers might want to use in order to play their little power games and their little, we won 5 Audies. Yeah. We're the best publisher, and I might get that Audie because of my like 20 minutes of audio that I added to it, but I'll get to like for the rest of the time say, I'm an audio winning
Best
narrator,
epilogue you ever did.
Yeah.
I think absolutely very, very.
There's just a lot more beyond just our own, our own contributions. We're part of a team.
Absolutely. And I think, so much of the theme of today's conversation is the thing we have to protect and cherish and is the most valuable is this time in our boxes, in the booth, and how we connect to and tell those stories. And there's a lot of other noise that we have to manage to do that the best way possible. But that's all we got at the end of the day. And that's the most important thing to focus on. So thank you guys so much for taking the time. I'm going to wrap up with one speed round question, which is, get ready, pop quiz, which is that as you're looking forward and whether or not you can manifest it or it's already on your calendars, what types of stories or characters are you finding yourself really craving to tell in the booth to fill that cup for you? It could be a project you're working on right now. I'm very excited for a project I work on next week, which is I get 2 back-to-back stories of very complicated women that are not easy to like on the surface. I feel like a lot of times in romance, we're very easy, likable women. And I get to tell 2 stories of women who are making some pretty challenging choices in their life, and being able to dig into that story and help you empathize with why she makes the choices that she is really, really, really fulfilling to me. So I'm very excited about that. Wesleigh?
I knew you were going to say me first.
I'll come back around.
I could stand a little more rom-com, if I could test that in my life, because I think I'm funny. But I would love to. But now Joel just said, rom-com ain't that damn easy. But I would love to explore more rom-com, and I think dig into my male voice back a little more, just work on projects where I can explore that range some more.
Yeah. Awesome. Teddy?
I did a femdom book this past year that was kind of fun because I'm so used to just, the alpha male who is just obsessed with protecting her while she fumbles and trips all the time. But the femdom was fun because I got to really play with that with the soft parts of the alpha male type, and I enjoyed that immensely. That was Daisy Jane. But so I like that kind of stuff. That's fun, only because it sort of breaks out of the format, because a lot of the romance follows a format that is pretty strictly adhered to. But it's nice when an author plays with those pieces to find how to stay within the formats of the genre, but also do something a little different, do something from a different perspective. And I always enjoy that.
Yeah.
So, but I have a fair amount of those. There's a lot of authors that I work with who are creative and do like to play in that kind of abstract way that I like. So just more of that.
More, yeah. Joel?
In terms of the romance world, I would love to be doing more Scottish romances. I think I'm really good at them. And I think they're really fun to do. I would love to do more cozy mysteries because they don't write them for men. And they don't write many for men. And I'd like to do some more queer YA because that's one of my happy places. Those are my answers, I think. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to bring Rose back in to give us the illustrious outro for today.
Hi, Rose.
Thank you so much for joining us for the 5th Rosemoor Roundtable. You can follow all of today's guests on social media or find them on their websites, which we've linked in the details. To keep up with what's next on the Rosemoor Roundtable, you can subscribe to this podcast on the app you're listening to now, or follow Samantha Brentmore at Ms._Brentmore. or Rose Dioro at Rose Dioro VO on your social media platform of choice, where we will both enthusiastically be promoting the next discussion. Thank you to Brickshop Audio, our producer and distributor for the podcast, and thank you for listening. See you next time.